Cartoons hold the whimsical world of our childhood fantasies, but the conspiracy theories that accompany them are just as colorful. Number 10. In 2008, DreamWorks produced the iconic action comedy film Kung Fu Panda. The movie follows the life of Po, a panda bear, who later goes on to become a kung fu master, alongside the Furious Five, which consists of Viper, Tigress, Monkey, Crane, and Mantis. Elsewhere, a premonition revealed that a villainous snow leopard named Tai Lung would escape from the high-security prison, and the Dragon Warrior needed to be chosen. The one who was worthy of this would receive the powers of the Dragon Scroll. There are a few theories about this movie, one of which centers around Tai Lung. One conspiracy states that he'd always been the Dragon Warrior. It explained that this character actually succeeded in the movie, even though he was ultimately defeated. A Reddit user explained that he was never denied the scroll or his destiny of becoming the Dragon Warrior, but it was all just a test. The leopard was supposed to accept the denial with humility, after which the scroll would have been granted to him. In order to test if an acolyte is worth completing the training, the dojo would deny them the scroll after the test to determine what type of person they were. If they had mastered the art of balance and inner peace along with physical training, they could accept such denial with humility. The acolyte in this case would prove that they are perfect inside and out, after which the master would explain the reason and then grant them the scroll. However, Tai Lung didn't react with humility. Instead, he burst out with anger and hatred, so he was not granted the scroll. It wasn't because he wasn't worthy. It was because he'd proved that he was unworthy of the scroll and not found inner peace. Another odd theory, though, is that the entire show was about Asian parenting. Tai Lung, Tigress, and Po are the representations of the three different types of children that Asian parents see, and Master Shifu represents those parents. The snow leopard represents the golden boy with his visible talents and his picture-perfect attitude, but as he grows up, he becomes more competitive, and eventually he becomes pretty bitter when he does not achieve what he desires. Tigress is the dark horse of the children. She has impressive talents, but not quite on the level of Tai Lung. She's inferior to him and never gets to explore her interests. She's forced onto the same path as the other, but doesn't get the same love as he did. She does grow up and turns out okay, but battles some internal turmoil. Then Po is the wild card. He has no talents and is treated like garbage. The master had no dreams or expectations for him until he found out that he was not the traditional warrior. He then encourages Po to explore his own path, and he's trained differently. According to this conspiracy, Asian parents hold math and science in high regard, and some children don't live up to their expectations and end up being emotionally neglected in some instances. Number 9. Family Guy was launched in 1999 and quickly caught the attention of the Fox Broadcasting Company. It follows the lives of a dysfunctional family that's being thrown from one crazy scenario to the next. The Griffins live in a Rhode Island town, and the entire show is weird and politically incorrect. The family consists of 6 individuals, including the father, Peter Griffin, who's a bumbling yet well-intentioned person who's an Irish-American Catholic. He's married to Lois, a stay-at-home mother and a piano teacher, who came from a family of wealthy socialites. They have 3 children together, including Meg, the teenage daughter who's always the center of Peter's jokes due to her lack of popularity. Chris is another one of their children, who's not intelligent and is a bit overweight. Then there's Stewie, a diabolical infant who displays some adult mannerisms. He speaks fluently and is often accompanied by Brian, a talking dog. This conspiracy theory centers around this particular character, as some fan theorists believe that the dog actually writes the entirety of the show. One Reddit user brought this to a subreddit and referred to one of the episodes called Peter Problems. In one scene, Brian states that he has a job as a writer, saying, quote, "See this? All of this? This is the raw material of a picture that I'm going to paint with words." So this got the theorists thinking, what if the show in the fictional realm is the product of an unfinished novel that Brian is authoring? Supporting evidence for this is that he's seen as the voice of reason. His whole family has some exaggerated flaws, which are seen through his eyes. The only person in the family who has any reason to hate Meg is Brian. which would explain why everyone else is so rude to Meg in the novel. Since Peter and Chris are both unintelligent in the eyes of Brian, this could be a reason why both of their stupidity is so exaggerated in the show. This theory may also explain why no one is questioning a talking and walking dog, and why he manages to get with all the attractive women in town. Some point out holes in the story, like that one episode where he's deceased yet the story continues. But there may be an answer for this as well. Stewie filled him in and even described the other dog, Vinny, as a super Italian. This of course isn't the only conspiracy theory associated with the show. Some have suggested that the show is purgatory. The characters are all being tortured for their sins, and Stewie is an evil genius who's trapped within the body of an infant. Lois is a wealthy heiress whose punishment is to be trapped in a money-strapped relationship. Brian is an intellectual who's stuck inside an animal. Peter is a childish, elderly man who's clinging to the past. Both Chris and Meg are the kids that they used to tease and torment in school, and Quagmire may represent an incubus. Others believe that the entire series is being told from the perspective of the infant, who possibly wants to end his mother's life. The reason that Brian can talk is because children personify their pets, according to this theory. Number 8. The ever-so-popular cartoon ScoobyDoo first aired in 1969. The Great Dane was named ScoobyDoo after a line sung by Frank Sinatra. The series centers around this hound and his family, which is called Mystery Inc. His best friend is Shaggy, who's a very hungry teen. Then there's Fred, the dapper leader, and the orange-haired beauty Daphne. Along with them is the nerdy Velma, who all travel together in the blue, green, and orange van, where they solve national and local mysteries of a supernatural element. One of the various fan theories about this cartoon postulates that the gang is actually traveling around to avoid being drafted into the war. The logic behind this is that the time period in the show is during the Vietnam War. Theorists also point to the fact that Shaggy takes on a hippie motif, and Fred, who comes off as rather straight-laced, stands out amongst them and almost seems out of place. It's suggested that they're trying to head for Canada to escape being drafted, with Fred and his fiancée and the activist teen Velma helping out. The mystery solving would just be a side project for them as they head across the country. Another theory, though, is a bit more disturbing. It paints those three characters as ghosts who met their demise back in the 60s. Supporting evidence for this is their dress style, which appears to be from around that time. Scooby and Shaggy, though, are unaware that their friends have passed away, and due to this lack of awareness, the other three choose to carry on working with them. They hope to find other ghosts who can recruit them, but each case becomes a scam. Fans also suggested that Shaggy may be a wizard. They point to his supernatural ability to levitate and make things appear. The first bit of evidence for this appeared in an episode called High Rise Hair Raiser, where he accidentally cast a spell and its reversal. A rather unusual conspiracy depicts Scooby as being tied to a Soviet space dog program, where the Soviets are experimenting with a breeding program to create intelligent animals capable of spaceflight and possibly talking. This speculation is supported by the show's title, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Theorists suggest that the CIA has been looking for Scooby since the first episode aired during the Cold War, and right after the first moonwalk took place. Number 7. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends was an animated series that was produced at Cartoon Network Studios. It initially premiered on Cartoon Network back in 2004 as a 90-minute-long movie, which would later become a series of half-hour-long episodes. The show follows a home that was made by Madame Foster for imaginary friends, who would come into existence once a child imagines them. When the children outgrow their imaginary friends, they're brought into the foster home after being abandoned. There were 1,340 imaginary friends living there, but by the end of the story, Madame stated that there were 2,038 friends living there. These friends also included her own, whom she never grew out of. The main characters included Francis Foster, who's referred to as Frankie. Mac, who is Terrence's younger brother, is one of the main protagonists. He's the creator of Blue, who's an imaginary friend. Other notable characters are Goo, Cheese, Wilt, and Duchess. This conspiracy, though, regards Frankie and Madame Foster. A significant question that plays on this conspiracy is Frankie imaginary? This theory began in 2014 when theorists suggested that Frankie was a younger version of Madame Foster. They point out the similar clothing. Frankie appears to be wearing the same clothes as her grandmother. Their physical appearance also seems very similar. It's been postulated that Frankie was made up by the old lady as a way of maintaining her foster home while she was away. She enjoyed the foster home and the friends, but knew that she was aging fast and probably wouldn't be able to maintain it for much longer. Supporting evidence for such a conspiracy points to the fact that Frankie has no imaginary friend, and she doesn't seem to have much of a life outside of the foster home. It's also suggested that she dates people because she likes them more than her imaginary friends, or because the dates are unaware of her position as an imaginary friend. But there is, however, an alternate theory. It answers the question that if she was imaginary, then why's she got a driver's license? This theory turns the tables on Frankie, stating that the grandmother had actually passed away and she couldn't deal with it, so she made an imaginary grandmother. Madame Foster's attitude suggests this. She seems childlike and energetic compared to the general elderly. This is possibly why the teenager stays at the foster home, to keep the imaginary grandmother alive, rather than to deal with her passing. Number 6. The Magic School Bus series centers around a teacher and her students journeying through life on the Magic School Bus, and even taking a tour of the human body. Miss Frizzle is an eccentric science teacher who takes the children on some exciting, yet somewhat dangerous field trips through the solar system, the human body, and various other places. According to one of the conspiracy theories surrounding the show, the teacher was added among multiple other characters as a Time Lord. Theorists point out that Doctor Who and this children's show have a lot in common. Both shows have main characters that are wacky and love to teach people about the universe. Both of them travel in magical vehicles that take them back in time and even through space. Theorists have drawn various parallels between the two shows, and have concluded that Miss Frizzle may in fact be a Time Lord, just like the Doctor. Doctor Who is a British science fiction TV series that depicts the adventures of the Doctor, who's a human-like alien called a Time Lord from another planet. He can travel throughout time and space using his TARDIS, a blue telephone box that is much larger on the inside, similar to the tents in Harry Potter. Due to the fact that the teacher back in the Magic School Bus show is just as eccentric, has a vehicle that can go through space and time, and has various other similarities, theorists have suggested that this must mean that she is in fact a Time Lord, just like the Doctor. According to this theory, the teacher is a survivor of the Time War. She fled the planet in her disguised TARDIS, and as she tries to assimilate into an Earth culture, she gets a job at a school. Theorists matched up the similarities, pointing to both characters having a strange fashion sense. They're both wacky and no one really knows how old Miss Frizzle is, because she always avoids the question. She could even be over 900 years old. It's also pointed out that she takes some companions along with her, and travels through space and time in a disguised magic school bus that has its own personality, much like Doctor Who's TARDIS. Even though the Doctor claims to be the last of his kind, this aspect has been disproven throughout the series. This would make it plausible for the teacher to have also escaped the war, relocating to another planet. Branching off from this conspiracy, others suggest that Frizzle already existed within the Doctor Who universe. They speculate that she could be a lesser-known character, someone like Iris, who comes to meet the Doctor during his 8th reincarnation. She'd claimed to be a time lady who grew up on the same planet, but it was later discovered that she was part of another race entirely, the Clockworks, who have 2 hearts. The similarities between her and Frizzle is that she escaped her home planet on a TARDIS shaped like a double-decker bus. But another theory depicts the science teacher as a different character, someone who shares her curly locks, like River Song. Aside from the hair, there's another connection between the two. In one of the Magic School Bus episodes, they embark on a journey on Frizzle's body, and they get to see her heart. She only has 1 heart, which takes out the idea that she's a clockwork. River, too, only has 1 heart, and is known to be able to change her appearance, and perhaps her school teacher gig was just one of her many adventures. Number 5. The Smurfs were a popular television series in the 1980s. The show would follow the lives of the little blue characters who lived in their village that was made from mushrooms. Many of them were under the leadership of Papa Smurf. The society also consists of Smurfette, Hefty Smurf, Brainy Smurf, Clumsy Smurf, Grouchy Smurf, and so on. Other characters include the villain, Gargamel, and his companion, the cat, Azrael. There are various theories relating to the little blue creatures, and it starts with the 7 sins. Theorists point out to the names of the characters as a clear representation of this. It starts with the only female Smurf, Smurfette, who may represent lust. Gargamel had actually created her to destroy the other Smurfs using this sin. Of course, this doesn't actually happen in the cartoon itself, though. The next is Baker Smurf, who takes on the gluttony sin and is associated with overindulgence in food and drink. He's always baking and therefore is always eating, and spends a whole lot of his time chasing Greedy Smurf, who represents greed. This character always steals from others, but mostly Baker Smurf. Another notable character is Lazy Smurf, who of course represents sloth. He doesn't do anything and just lays around all day. He's unwilling to act or care about anything going on around him. Theorists also pointed to Grouchy Smurf, who represents wrath. He's always angry and never has a smile on his face. He insults others and has uncontrolled outbursts. The Enamored Smurf represents envy because his entire life is centered around trying to win over Smurfette, but he's also envious of her. Pride is defined by Vanity Smurf, who's constantly looking at himself in the mirror and is extremely obsessed with himself. Papa Smurf, the leader, may also be associated with Satan, as he's depicted wearing red and even has a pentacle on his armchair, according to one conspiracy theorist. Gargamel, according to the theory, seems to be a Franciscan priest, and his house is a church in ruins. The cat, Azrael, who takes an angelic name, may be a fallen angel. His name is similar to that of other angels like Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. Another aspect that's been pointed out is the frigid cap that all the Smurfs wear. This is something consistent with the Freemasons during the Middle Ages, and it was used as an iconic symbol for them to recognize one another. In an alternate theory, the Smurf society is all communists. Battle Axe Warrior, a Reddit user, took to Random Thoughts, a subreddit, with the following statement, saying, quote, "Smurfs have no form of currency in their village. There was even an episode in the cartoon where they help a king, and he offered them gold as a reward." They then go on to say that the Smurfs refused this because they don't require such things in the village. The theorist concluded his statement with, "Technically, the Smurfs are all communists." Back in 2008, a YouTube video was in circulation reporting on this exact theory. It did state that it shouldn't be taken too seriously, but they began pointing out similarities between the Smurfs and the ideal communist society. They point to the fact that the society itself is self-sufficient and running its own community. It needs no money in its collectivist culture, and each of the characters work for the good of the entire community. It's also noted that the leader does seem to resemble Karl Marx, and loves the red color. Capitalism, in this case, is represented by the ruthless Gargamel, with his only concern being personal satisfaction. That video goes on to say that the Smurfs and its communist undertones were actually a ploy that was used to influence those watching it during the Cold War. It was also proposed that Smurf is an acronym for Small Men Under Red Forces. This doesn't make much sense though, since the original name for the series and the creatures came from a French word. Number 4. Phineas and Ferb was a much-loved American animated television series that aired in 2007 and concluded in 2015. The show follows the life of the Flynn family, which consists of Linda Flynn Fletcher, the mother of Phineas Flynn, Ferb Fletcher, and their older sister, Candace Flynn. She's married to Lawrence Fletcher. The two brothers are constantly going on the wildest of journeys, which Candace witnesses but can't seem to get her parents to believe. The family also has a pet, Perry the Platypus, who's actually a secret spy and the nemesis of Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz. Two of the darker conspiracy theories revolve around Candace. One Reddit user suggested that everyone knew about the boys' adventures except for Candace. He explains that their mother actually knows everything that her sons are doing, but never confirms it to her daughter because then it would cut off the writings that she's basing on her. The theorist points out that perhaps Linda is an active part in the adventures, or maybe just sees them on a small scale for two youngsters to be able to accomplish. It's also noted that the whole town often takes part in the shenanigans, such as the Father's Day episode or even Swinter. Throughout the series, there are some subtle hints that the mother is jotting down the shenanigans of her daughter, and maybe using them as comedy for the book, which she is in the process of writing, which deals with teens. An alternate theory, the second dark theory, regarding the orange-haired teen is that Phineas and Ferb are nothing more than Candace's imagination. Yet another Reddit user suggested that Phineas had passed away, and that this was her way of dealing with it. Ferb also has a disability that prevents him from talking or moving around too much. The sister then creates various scenarios where the two brothers play together and build amazing things. This could be why Linda never sees what's going on. It's all happening in an imaginary world. Additionally, Dr. Doofenshmirtz is just a psychologist who Candace sees twice a week to try and get back to normalcy. This suggestion is further supported by the last episode of the series, when the two brothers head off to college, which may indicate the sister's final acceptance. Another dark theory, though, refers to the biological father of Phineas. It's called the real dad theory, which many fans have already thought of when watching the show. Linda and Doofenshmirtz have some sort of history. Phineas looks nothing like Lawrence, but takes on the same triangular face and hairstyle as the villain. This could also explain why Phineas is so intelligent, since Doofenshmirtz is a scientist. The role of Perry, in this case, is to prevent the two from ever meeting, because if they did, they may wreak havoc together, especially since the young boy has a moldable mind. The next conspiracy theory relates to how the boys fund their incredible projects. Roller coasters, rockets, and time machines would all cost millions of dollars. One suggestion states that perhaps the OWCA, the company that Perry works for, is funding their operations. If they got bored, then they would probably spend more time with their pet. If that were to happen, Perry wouldn't be able to get away to spy on his arch-nemesis. Number 3. The cartoon series SpongeBob SquarePants follows the life of a peculiar yellow sponge who lives with his pet snail, Gary, in a city called Bikini Bottom. Bikini Bottom is located on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. The sponge works as a fry cook for a restaurant called the Krusty Krab, run by Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob and his best friend, the starfish named Patrick, embark on adventures together and stir up trouble. Other notable characters are Squidward, the moody squid who works alongside the fry cook and is also his neighbor. Pearl, the teenage sperm whale, is Mr. Krabs' daughter. Sandy Cheeks, the underwater squirrel, is also a notable character. There are various conspiracy theories regarding this bubbly cartoon that's come up over the years. Most of these conspiracies are about Mr. Krabs. Many already know the theory that the Krabby Patty's secret ingredient is crab meat, but this has branched out to various other conspiracies about crabs and the patties. One Reddit user, Walla Walla Rhubarb, explained that when a whale passes away, that serves as the fuel for the whole ecosystem. This is known as whale fall, which is so rich in nutrients that they can sustain an entire ecosystem for quite some time. This Redditor explains that he finds it odd that Krabs has a whale for a daughter, but never mentions Pearl's mother in the show, or how he came to be her guardian. The theorists suggest that he actually stumbled across the carcass of a whale, Pearl's mother, and built a restaurant nearby. He found the whale's daughter as an infant and adopted her. The restaurant owner used the carcass as an ingredient in his patties, but of course this supply would inevitably run out. And how could he keep running his business if that were to happen? According to this conspiracy, Krabs was waiting for Pearl to become fully grown, and then send her off to college while she was actually being cooked up and served to the customers. Perhaps Krabs has been doing this for ages, and no one knew about it or even questioned it. An alternative theory paints the same character as a homicidal maniac. As indicated in the Nasty Patty episode, the character knows how to hide a body. It was in this episode that a health inspector was at the restaurant, but the owner believed he was a con artist who was just trying to score some free food. Krabs asks SpongeBob to create a tainted Krabby Patty, and as soon as the inspector eats it, he collapses. Instead of calling for help, the greedy crab would instead dispose of the body. In another episode called Out of the Picture, Krabs also tried to end Squidward after coming up with the idea that the character's art would be worth more if he was no longer alive. Initially, he just sent the employee on some dangerous missions, but when this failed, he tried to bash Squidward's head in with a mallet. This scene took on the same feeling as Stephen King's The Shining. Throughout the entirety of the cartoon, This particular character shows an apparent lack of empathy and a disregard for the welfare of others. We wouldn't put it past him if he was trying to raise Pearl as a meat supplier. Number 2. The Powerpuff Girls is a well-known animated children's show that stars a trio of girls who have superpowers. They serve as the protectors of Townsville. The trio consists of a red-haired leader, Blossom, a sweet blonde girl named Bubbles, and the ill-tempered Buttercup. According to the lore, Professor Utonia was trying to create the perfect little girls in his lab when another ingredient, Chemical X, got caught in the mix. The result was a group of 3 superheroes. But the show did not evade the fan conspiracy theorists, and so the Brenda theory was born. The Brenda theory suggests that the Powerpuff Girls are fractions of one host. The host, of course, is unknown to the viewers, but theorists have nicknamed this purported host Brenda. It's said that this girl had developed a dissociative identity disorder due to the idea that an older brother had bullied her. The brother manifests as Mojo Jojo, the main villain in the series. The theorists took a look into what each girl represented. Blossom is the person that Brenda wants to be. She wants maturity and level-headedness. Bubbles was the soft, bubbly side. She represents innocence and the submissiveness that the host actually featured in reality. Rarely, a bit of the more aggressive side would manifest in Bubbles, which is why she can sometimes be shown as a bit more feisty. Buttercup is the aggressive side and was created by the host's thoughts that were in retaliation to the bully. This character represents dissatisfaction with life. While she's generally shown as a more violent individual, she also indicates hidden depths, but such depths are reserved for Bubbles. Another theorist managed to connect the apparent brother to the Rowdy Rough Boys. The only information about the brother is that he's to blame for the mental issues, and is represented in the supposed hallucinations as the main villain. The antagonist is the creator of the Rowdy Rough Boys, which makes Mojo Jojo the father of the Rowdy Rough Boys, which, in the case of the Brenda theory, is the representation of the brother's complex personality. According to this individual's conspiracy, the jealousy and stress from fighting had also caused the brother to develop the same psychological issues and find her in the imaginary world. He became even more furious and ended up creating the boys to counter the girls and continue to torment her in a non-existent place. The Rowdy Rough Boys consist of Brick, the confident, independent boy. Butch represents how the brother became when he began bullying the sibling, and Boomer is the representation of before he began to hate his sister. He's innocent and sweet. Other conspiracies relating to this series are that him, the satanic figure, can somehow regenerate at will, which explains why he keeps on coming back. One Reddit user theorized that him has the power of regeneration and that the character cannot actually be defeated, but is somewhat merely depleted of astral energy. All the times that the viewers see him perish are actually all just projections of energy. According to another Redditor, the professor uses his own DNA to make the girls as well, because he couldn't have children. He made use of all the ingredients needed to create a life in another way, and maybe even used some of his vital fluid in the mix. Another conspiracy suggests that the professor chose to create girls instead of boys for a moral reason. According to the nursery rhyme that goes, "Girls are made of sugar, spice, and all things nice," it refers to simple, unharmful ingredients, whereas little boys are made of snakes, snails, and puppy dog tails, maybe a bit more cruel. He didn't want to injure another living creature, so he chose the alternative route. Number 1. Gravity Falls is an animated television series that aired in June of 2012 and concluded in 2016. While it's marketed to children, the show takes a rather adult-like feel, with the additions of demonic possession and adult comedy. The show centers around the mystery twins, Dipper and Mabel Pines, who were sent off to live with their great-uncle in a mysterious town called Gravity Falls. Grunkle Stan gets the siblings to run his Mystery Shack, a tourist trap that he owns. The twins set out on various adventures to unlock the secrets of the town. Other notable characters include Seuss, the handyman, Wendy, the mellow employee, Old Man McGucket, who's the local cook, Lil Gideon, a young boy who later becomes a villain, and Stanford, the author of the books and the brother of Stan. One of the other male villains in the series is Bill Cipher, the triangular demon who plots to take over Gravity Falls. The conspiracy attached to this show may lead us down the path of Freemasonry and the Illuminati. One fan noted that Dipper isn't the character's real name, but rather a nickname. They point out that the two brothers, Stanley and Stanford, have similar names, and the twins would likely have identical names as well. So the theorist came up with an alternative name for Dipper that matched Mabel, such as Gable. After looking it up, he found out it was actually a name that means the triangular portion of a wall between the edges of a dual-pitched roof. This would correlate with the general feeling of the entire show, and Bill Cipher, the demon. But another theorist provided an alternate theory. He points out that Stanley and Stanford both have the same prefixes to their names, which means this would have been the same rule for Dipper and Mabel. The name he suggested was Mason, as in Freemason. He accompanies this suggestion with an image of the Illuminati pyramid symbol, which again links the two characters together. Some have suggested that Stanford wrote 6 books in total, but we only know numbers 2 and 3. Some believe that Seuss actually authored one of them due to his extensive knowledge of the town, and that Old Man McGucket has one of them, which he uses to build his strange doom machines. There are also some conspiracy theories about Lil Gideon, one of which proposes that he used an amulet to mess with his mother's head. His mother appears to have a constant terrified expression on her face. At one point in the series, she even muttered to herself, "Just keep vacuuming," indicating that she really was scared of something that happened between her and her son, and has been conditioned into obeying him. In later seasons of the show, the evil pyramid is eventually defeated, but some fans believe that he actually survived and has taken up residence in Grunkle Stan's mind. The film theorists suggested that the cipher is controlling Stan while he sleeps, and hints of this can be found scattered throughout the show. But one of the main clues is in the 3rd journal. The following was written in the journal. It turns out that the memory rays effect can be undone through exposure to important images and people from the past. The reason that Stan recovered so much faster is that we began recovery while the erasure was still fresh, less than an hour after contact. If the effect of the ray was actually undone when he got his memories back, then that could mean that the cipher is still inside him. The theorists then point out all the clues supporting this theory, including the backward message from Bill Cipher and the scavenger hunt to find actual cipher statues. There are also some strange similarities between the two characters throughout the show. Another supporting piece of evidence for this relates to another conspiracy. Some believe that Stan can make up false memories to trick and deceive the cipher. He puts in a code on the vending machine to unlock the door to his secret room, and presses 5 buttons each time. But in the episode Dreamscapes, where the gang is traveling through his memories, one of the memories shows a different code. In one of the episodes, all of the characters have to stop on a cipher illuminated on the ground. There are 9 symbols, each of which is connected to one of the characters. Some theorists believe that the reason that Bill isn't banished isn't just because of Stan's interference, but because the characters are not standing on the correct symbols. They refer to 2 characters in particular, Dipper and Wendy. Dipper, who wears a hat that has a pine tree on it, stands on the pine tree symbol, whereas Wendy stands on the ice symbol. But the girl is more outdoorsy and comes from a family of lumberjacks, so perhaps it should be her who stands on the pine tree. This is also supported by the fact that the 2 swap hats at the end of the show. Dipper would be the ice symbol because he's often seen carrying ice, and being cool is very important to his character. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.